This week we're talking about the upcoming Ubuntu 25.04 release and the big XZ release. You may not know why it's a big deal, but it is, I promise. Then we sort of scratch our heads over EUOS. We talk about the new Torvalds rant of note in the Linux kernel mailing list, and a whole lot more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 196, recorded Saturday, March 29th, running with safety scissors. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and you know what that means. It is time for some Untitled Linux Show. I almost announced the wrong show there. I've been doing this for a long time, and every once in a while, it still sneaks up on me. It's like, oh, are you doing something else? Anyway, we are doing the Untitled Linux Show. It is the three of us today. I've got Ken and I've got Jeff with me, and we're going to have a lot of fun. It's maybe a lighter news week than normal. I'm not sure. It kind of seemed nothing earth-shattering this week, at least that I'm aware of.
No, I'd agree. It was calmer sailing, but calm is good.
Every once in a while, you need some calm. Calm is good.
Yeah.
There is something sort of big in Ken's world over in Ubuntu land, and I'm going to jump over to Jeff, who also is going to talk about Ubuntu, but something nice. So we'll just do these two stories out of order. We'll let Jeff go first. We'll have Ken disconnect and reconnect, and then we will jump back in with Ken's story.
Yeah. So as you're soon to learn, Ubuntu 25.04 beta has been released, and its full release is less than a month away. It's time to dive into whether there are any notable regressions or improvements in performance. Michael Arable from Phoronix has done extensive benchmarking to analyze the performance of the updated code, and he tested Ubuntu 24.10 alongside 25.04 beta using an AMD Ryzen 9 7900 X3D, which is a 12-core processor. Or sorry, that should have been dyslexia there, 9700 X3D. 9900, because I specifically remember it was kind of weird that he used the brand new 12-core system that we did the benchmarking on last week. But sorry, 9900 X3D, 12-core processor, 24 threads. His setup included two 16 gigabyte DDR5 sticks at 6,000 megatransfers per second. And he used an AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX GPU. Now, if you check the link provided in the show notes, you'll find a detailed list of version changes between the two for Java, Python, security updates, compiler flags, all the nuances between the two operating systems. Michael noted that these benchmarks focus on desktop usage, not server or high-performance computing workloads. Those tests are likely to follow later using enterprise or server-grade hardware. While the AMD graphics hardware used here is slightly older, it's far from obsolete. Importantly, though, or even impressively, there's still some gains coming for RDNA 3 graphics cards, especially when it comes to Vulkan, which saw a notable uplift in performance. RDNA 4, of course, is still an evolving driver state and getting better all the time. But Michael picked RDNA 3 because it not only shows what more people would have, but RDNA 4 wasn't even available when 24.10 was released. So it wouldn't really be a fair comparison to compare an operating system for hardware that didn't exist yet. And because the changes in the driver, he was picking something a little more stable hardware-wise and driver-wise to see what subtle improvements came in. For gaming benchmarks, the improvements were evident, but generally minor and not always noticeable in real-world gameplay. Still, faster is faster, and overall, most benchmarks were closely matched, but the 25.04 snagged a few small victories. Out of 129 tests, 25.04 beta claimed 91 first-place finishes, compared to 24.10's 38. However, when you look at the geometric mean and the rankings, the wins for the 24.10 were narrow. And while 25.04 excelled in areas like compression and Python performance with significant improvements, most results were neck and neck. One of the key takeaways is that Ubuntu 25.04 is it has a pretty clear improvement, but I mean, realistically, we can't say Ubuntu as much as we can say, thanks in no small part to the kernel maintainers and, all the people that are involved in the graphics drivers and everything else that goes into making the core of Linux, solid. Not that Ubuntu doesn't have a part to play as well, but we should give love to everybody in the community because it's a large community project, not just canonical. So basically, with the updated graphics, newer kernel, newer software versions, Linux performance is steadily advancing. For the detailed results and benchmarks, check out the article linked in the show notes. But in summary, there are no major regressions, and overall, the outlook's very promising.
Yeah, so something to keep in mind is that this is the up-to-date Ubuntu, and we got Ken back. This is Ubuntu 24.10 that has been fully updated. And then compared with 25.04. So I bet it would be a different story if it were based on the stock like 24.10 off of the original ISO. That's going to be it's going to be a different conversation altogether.
Yeah, because Ubuntu now is more leaning into, I won't say cutting edge, but they're a lot closer to the edge than they were. Mm-hmm. So they're really being more aggressive about updating their packages, using newer kernels, not holding back quite so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting stuff.
How do I sound?
You're good, Ken. Why don't we talk about Ubuntu Studio? What's new there?
Well, we're going to be talking about both Ubuntu and Ubuntu Studio, and maybe even touching on Kubuntu. Marius Nestor was writing about Ubuntu Studio or Ubuntu 25.04 Plucky Puffin entering public beta testing. Public beta testing. Gotta love live. The Ubuntu Studio team also announced the beta release of Ubuntu Studio 25.04. Now, Marius reports that the recently released Linux 6.14 kernel will be powering Ubuntu 25.04. Featuring the GNOME 48 desktop environment, Ubuntu 25.04 promises many goodies like the triple buffering feature from Ubuntu, Papers as the default document viewer, replacing events. I'm still going to use my Ocular though, I think. And Beacon DB powered geolocation services. Dual boot Dual boot users will see improvements with a focus on BitLocker protected Windows systems. Users can now install Ubuntu alongside existing BitLocker partitions if enough unallocated space and dual boot support are available for encrypted installations and other advanced scenarios. The Ubuntu desktop installer even received a new option to replace an existing Ubuntu installation. So that should make it easier for some of y'all if you're already running Ubuntu and don't want to wait to download it. But sharing some of the same desktop features as Kubuntu, Ubuntu Studio will also ship with the latest Qt6-based Plasma 6.3 KDE desktop, Firefox 136 Snap as the default browser, and LibreOffice 25.2 is provided as the default office suite. In the full installation, of course. Ubuntu Studio's most notable change is that the default panel icons are back, and that default is dynamic based on which one of the applications you have installed. For audio applications, we'll see Pipewire upgraded to 1.2.7, Audacity upgraded to 3.7.3, Ardor upgraded to 8.12.0. On the graphics side, we're going to have Digicam upgraded to 8.5.0. Of course, GIMP's going to be upgraded to 3.0. Krita will be upgraded to 5.2.9. On the Blender video applications, we'll have Blender upgraded to 4.3.2, not 4.4 yet, hopefully by 25.10. KDN Live will be upgraded to 24.12.3, and FreeShow will be upgraded to 1.3.9. Now, in our show notes, I have linked to the Ubuntu Studio blog about this release, as well as Marius's article. The Ubuntu Studio blog includes a list of multimedia package versions if you want to see everything that will be current in that one. I also want to remind you, this is a beta release. It should be finalized sometime later in April, but we could see changes before that final release in April. And Jeff, thank you for showing us how the performance will compare with the 2410 I'm currently running. Hopefully,
a tiny bit better in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but the biggest thing is no regressions. But there were some compression in Python that really took a jump forward.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe Chrome will be able to support 9600 sample rate. That's what was causing it earlier.
Maybe that might be exactly what it was. So it looks like the upcoming Ubuntu release is going to be pretty solid. I'm rather excited. Now 25.04, that is not one of their LTS releases.
No, it's only supported for
correct.
9 months.
Yeah. Is 25.10 going to be an LTS, or we wait till 26?
No.
26.04.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. So this is where they get to do all the crazy stuff, right? They get to try everything, try all the nutty things. Although I don't know there's anything too crazy coming in 25.04.
Oh, Wayland.
I suppose that's true. We've been talking about
Katie.
More playing
KDE
around with Pipewire.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm waiting for them to catch up with OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It's running 1.4.1 already.
Mm-hmm. I kind of think Ubuntu is never going to quite catch up with Tumbleweed or Fedora, because those are they are the bleeding edge distros, right?
Yeah, they're not gonna. They're kind of back from the edge. They're the safety scissors of distribution. Now you have some of the Debian and some of those that they're in Red Hat Enterprise. Now those are the full bubble wrap. They're the encased in foam and all protected. But
I wondered where you were going to go from safety scissors. That's pretty accurate.
Or they just say they just fully take the scissors away. They didn't even let you have the safe ones.
I don't know about that. I've broken some RHEL installs pretty badly over the years.
but in general, they run in pretty old stuff because it's tested, it's known, it's
Yeah.
They're not
even
trying
with
to jump
Ubuntu
ahead. Studio,
I've done some damage.
It's true.
And y'all have heard it.
You can always do damage, but if you're running straight RHEL or you're Debian stable, you're pretty solid.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So speaking of distros and interesting, unique things, there is a bit of news on the gaming front. I came across this article that apparently HP, Hewlett-Packard, is looking at making a Linux-based gaming handheld. And that really surprised me. So we know that Lenovo is working on their Legion Go S, and it's going to be SteamOS based. There are some other companies that are sort of looking into doing this. We might see something from ASUS and MSI, but one of the executives from over at HP said that they are they're looking at. Let's see, how exactly did he say it? Thanks to Valve adding the beginnings of support for non-Steam Deck handhelds, so SteamOS running on decks that are not the Steam Deck, it is now possible to make a gaming handheld, an HP gaming handheld running SteamOS. And then he said something really interesting here. It says that they struggle with the experience of Windows. And that sort of caught me off guard, although I am reminded of another story in the news this week, and that is that in Microsoft's latest beta of Windows 11, the next Windows 11 release, so like the developer preview, I think they call it, they've removed the script that you can run at your first install to say, I really don't want to do a Microsoft account, thank you. It's like bypass NRO, I think is what it's called. And they've removed that. And so now Microsoft is trying even harder to make everyone get Microsoft accounts, which, is something that most of us really don't want. We have to do a Windows install. We don't want to do a Microsoft account. So all of that is interesting. I have to wonder if that's the sort of thing that HP is talking about, because, HP is going to want to be able to give their gamers their own, first run experience. And on Linux, that's easy. On Windows, that's much less easy. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to have yet another player in this space, and we'll see if HP makes something that's worth playing on.
Oh, I bet they will. And I kind of wonder if the Steam Deck was less of Valve wanting to get into hardware and more of a proof of concept to show it can be done.
Sure.
And then why make another one if you can have the HPs, the Lenovo's, the other hardware manufacturers who are well versed in hardware? Because it's one thing to write code and have very good code. Manufacturing hardware is a whole nother world. I mean, you can have a great idea, but mass producing it is a monumental task.
And expensive.
And expensive. And you've got to have quality control and all this sort of integration. And it's a headache. And if Steam could go, okay, we did it. Now we let all these other manufacturers who are going to fight for it run our operating system, which Linux can very easily tailor to whatever the hardware you have. And you can add and subtract what you want versus Windows, where you're kind of stuck with the whole ball of yarn. It's kind of all or nothing so many times with Windows. And I'm sure there's ways you can cut it back, but they don't like to. And there's probably a lot of extra licensing to have that custom version if you want a custom version. And versus Linux, it's like, I want to do it. Okay, have at it.
Yep.
So when will we see a console version?
That's an interesting question. I think it makes sense to have a SteamOS console. Maybe even in like the Chromecast kind of form factor, the little thing that just hangs behind your TV. I mean, there's nothing that says that a console has to be a huge box.
And somebody comes out with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi capable controller that would hook up to it.
I mean,
well, I think you'll see a console when you see the full OS, SteamOS PC release. Because really, what's a console? It's a simplified PC. It's just a small form factor. It's, one of the powerful things of consoles is just they're very dedicated hardware. So, okay, we'll just make up an example. You have an AMD chip with 3D cache and an internal GPU, integrated GPU. Well, now you don't need any of the NVIDIA driver stuff. You don't need Intel driver stuff. You don't need, there's so much stuff you don't need because here's your hardware. I can put it in a smaller package and only support these limited things.
Hasn't there been some, speaking of which, for those of you listening, I held up my Steam controller that just happened to be on my desk with a significant look on my face. Isn't there are some like next gen Steam controller rumors that's been going around?
A little bit.
I didn't start them.
Yeah. I don't think it would not surprise me. There's not going to be a second Steam Deck. They said they were going to have a second Steam Deck when they had a very major jump in hardware performance. I'm thinking with all the hardware manufacturers getting on board, why compete with your audience? Because Steam's main business is selling games. And if they're partnering with a whole bunch of other hardware manufacturers, they're in it to win it. And I bet we don't see a second one.
It's very possible. Like, so you kind of think through the economics of that, and what does Steam make its money on? Steam, I mean, they've made money, I'm sure, on the Steam Deck, but like, it's not the money printer that the Valve, the store itself is, right? The Steam store, where they just have to transfer bits and they get 15% or whatever, however much they get on the store. They just get a percentage of the cost of the bits, and that's all they have to do. Whereas when you make hardware, there's all kinds of liability and investment, and as you said, making hardware is hard. Selling software is easy in comparison.
Well, I mean, they might not have even made any money on the Steam Deck. It could be a break-even thing.
That could be. That's very possible.
Because a lot of times,
lost
look at the
leader,
Sony,
and they make it up with the software sold through it.
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly.
PlayStation and Xbox have done that for over a decade now. They
It's
sell
funny-
the hardware at a loss, but they make it up in the software.
It's funny you mention that, because I was noticing that major company behind a very popular streaming service is in. It looks like they're partnering with Microsoft to let you stream Xbox games or play Xbox games through their streaming service.
Which service is that?
Amazon's gaming service.
Yeah, that makes sense. Amazon has been trying to do that sort of thing. Various companies have been trying to make game streaming like that work for the longest time. And I just personally, I don't see it. The value proposition does not make sense to me. Because most people, I don't know that I'm ever going to buy the idea that you can meaningfully play a game, a high performance game, at internet latencies, because internet latencies are like 20 milliseconds, and that's a lot, especially when it's added on top of all the latencies you already have. It never did make a whole lot of sense to me.
Though it would sure be a lot of help in pushing our, at least here in the States, our people who are responsible for our infrastructure on improving it.
I'm not going to touch that one. I have opinions, but I'm not going to touch that one. Instead, we are going to go on.
Ken is so optimistic.
We're going to go on to RescueZilla. And that is Ken's story, too, because we did things topsy-turvy out of order to start with. But we'll let Ken pick it up and tell us what is new in the newest version of RescueZilla.
Well, yes, we're talking about RescueZilla, and thank you, Marius Nestor, for writing about the latest stable version of RescueZilla, version 2.6. He states, this Swiss Army knife of system recovery distribution includes a brand new base derived from Ubuntu 24.10 Oracular Oriole to provide users with the best possible hardware support, as well as an updated UEFI Secure Boot shim package to support Windows 11 machines. Under the hood, RescueZilla 2.6 includes the latest part clone, 0.3.33 open source partition clone and restore tool, and the memtest 86 Plus version 7.0 open source memory testing tool. It also includes many new and significantly updated translations alongside other minor improvements and bug fixes. RescueZilla version 2.6 release note states RescueZilla creates backups that are fully compatible with the industry standard CloneZilla tool and works with images created by, in addition to CloneZilla, VirtualBox's VDI, VMware's VMDK, QEmu's QCOW2, Hyper-V's VHDX, and the raw image files .dd or .img. Redo Rescue, Foxclone's Fog Project, FS Archiver. Now, RescueZilla will only do restore only. It won't let you explore those FS Archiver files, as well as Apart GTK and Redo Backup and Recovery. Now, as always, I do recommend following the link in our show notes for more information about RescueZilla.
Yeah, so just kind of thinking about that as you RescueZilla, is it synced up with CloneZilla? Like, do they do it releases at the same time?
It seems to be close to the recent CloneZilla update, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was just thinking through like what the release cadence of those two projects look like. Because CloneZilla is it's the tool itself, which is also bootable. And then RescueZilla is the Linux distro that has a lot of that built into it. So yeah, it's an interesting pair of projects, the way they work together.
So you can use CloneZilla for backing up. But if you do have used another thing, or you've got virtual devices that you've been backing up, you can use RescueZilla for recovering those if you have to.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so probably one of the things that you use in RescueZilla to not take, or well, in CloneZilla, I suppose, to not take up as much space on the disk is things like XZ and XZ utils, and we just had a release of XZ utils. And this one is kind of a big deal. I'm not sure if Jeff is going to tell you why it's a big deal. And if he doesn't, I will. But we'll let Jeff take it away and tell us about XZ utils.
Well, now I'm interested to hear what you think is a big deal, because I'm keeping a little high level, because this can get pretty deep pretty quick. But so XZ utils 5.8 has been released, bringing performance improvements to the LZMA and LZMA2 decoder, which sounds like a mouthful, right? Well, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Now, maybe you can argue not quite as critical today as it was years ago. Compression algorithms have been around for a long time, and not just for storing data on block devices, but also for transferring data across phone lines and the internet. Some of our audience might even remember in the days when computers transferred data with the speed and efficiency of two tin cans connected by a string, and their storage capability was akin to a small stone tablet. Over the decades, much of the compression we use today has become built in, and there's still a need for high efficiency compression and decompression, so it hasn't gone away. And this is where XZ comes in. XZ is not only a highly efficient compression suite of utilities, but it's also a file format, or a compression format, the .xz file format to be precise. It improves compression and decompression using the LZMA and LZMA2 algorithms. Now, I won't dive too deeply into how these algorithms work, but it's the kind of stuff that lands you a doctorate. But for those unfamiliar with compression, think of it this way. Imagine I've got a text file with 100 spaces. To make it smaller and transfer it faster, you could use a special character to represent that there's a compression coming. Then you follow it with a space, followed by the number 100. So instead of storing 100 characters, you only need 5. 3 for 100, 1 for the space, and 1 for your special character. Well, when decompressing the program, it'll see that special character and the number and the space, and it can expand it back to its original file. While actual compression methods are far more complex, the concept is similar. So the dictionaries and everything, it's basically getting rid of redundancy and patterns. So it can get very deep very quickly, but the concept is solid. On the x86 platform, going back to our update, XZUtils 5.8 updates the libzma compression library, boosting decompression speed by up to 5% on systems built with GCC runtime library exception, and up to 15% on systems using the MUSL libc standard library for highly compressed files. Additionally, PowerPC sees improved compression speeds for both big endian and little endian systems, as well as 64-bit RISC-V processors that support unaligned access. For those wondering, eddiness determines whether the most significant bit in a binary number is stored on the left or on the right. The release also deprecates the LZMA utility script aliases, including LZCMP, LZDiff, LZLess, LZMore, LZgrep, LZegrep, and LZfgrep. It also rewrites the x86 E2K CLMUL CRC code for a performance boost. As a general purpose data compression library and command line tool suite, EUOS 5.8 includes several other updates, and these include support for CMake 3.20, minor tweaks to ARM64 CRC32 code, and improvements to BCJ filters. Be sure to check out the article linked in the show notes, along with a link to the official website. There you'll find detailed documentation, links to the official GitHub page, and there, the official LZMA software development kit, which Utilities is built on. So from there, you can dive as deep into the subject matter as you like. So happy researching.
All right. So as to why this is an important release, that is because utils uses the even odd rule. They've made it standard. And so your 5.7 was their unstable beta releases. So you had 5.6 as a stable release and now 5.8 as a stable release. It is significant because this is the first major release after the backdoor, which I think that is actually fairly significant. Not necessarily anything directly to do with the backdoor in the code, but just I find it a good sign for the health of the project that they've been able to move past it and do another major release after all of that happened. So it's sort of a significant release for XZ.
And in their documentation, they actually talk about some of the CVEs and what they've done, and they do cover some security stuff in their official documentation.
Thankfully, the 5.7 and 5.8 branches have been much less interesting when it comes to all of that. When you're in the security world, interesting is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to write a book.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like interesting security things, but yes, I cover this stuff. So I do not want interesting security things in any of my projects. Just in my writing about it.
Just in your spy thrillers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you think Michael Larrabell might do a performance check of it to see if it's any faster than the older one?
Benchmarking.
I bet I don't think he will, because it's very specific for the most part. I mean, it's compression. So I don't know as you'd get a whole article out of it, because you compress, you know how you compress and decompress a few different ways, and it's kind of a evolutionary release, not revolutionary. Yeah. So I don't think he would probably do it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I would almost expect that kind of a thing to be, well, honestly, it'll get covered in something like the Ubuntu 24.10 versus 25.04 roundup. You might have an XZ test in there that is going to use the two different versions of it, and that's sort of where that would get picked up.
Or I could do a comparison between it and I'm trying to. What's the one I'm using? Went to I can't think of the name of it. Yeah.
Well, and I say like in the XZ utils, but the LZMA and LZMA2 compression algorithms, they actually get used in a lot of different, I think 7-zip uses it, and there's some other ones as well. So you can't even just say, well, it's only XZ. It covers a lot of different stuff, and for the most part, at least on the computer data compression transfer, that the LZ algorithms pretty much have kind of been semi-standardized. I mean, there's other like compression programs out there, but a lot of them are based somewhere in the LZA or LZMA tree somewhere.
Yep. And the difference is, so like when you talk about optimizing things, it's going to be little differences at this point. It's things like, we have AVX 512 everywhere. There's this one AVX 512 instruction that we can use to do this one part of the decompression. And it's stuff like that most of the time it's not going to make a huge difference. Sometimes it will. Most of the time, though, it's going to be just little incremental improvements. And
it's for those servers that it's maybe streaming some data and that's all it does. So that small improvement actually turns out to be pretty big because that server is got,
That's all it does.
yeah, 256 cores continuously compressing things going out or something. But for most of this audience, unless you're running enterprise, you won't feel it. You just have to know it gets a little better.
Yeah, there's one other place where you might actually notice little changes like that, and that's things like in the kernel compression itself. Because on almost all modern desktops, the kernel that is on the drive is actually compressed. And a lot of times it's compressed with LZMA. And so if a big win shows up in the kernel itself, then your machine might boot a little bit faster, and you may notice that. That's one of the other places that we all sort of interact with these compression libraries a lot.
Or in tar.
Yeah, sure. You do a lot of tarring. All right. Well, let's talk about something else new that is coming that we all interact with, and that is display/desktop managers. And this has been quite the story over the last years, the number of years that I've been running Linux. I've been through quite a few display managers. I think there was a K display manager once upon a time, and then there's GDM, the GNOME display manager, and then the folks from KDE and maybe Fedora helped. I don't remember. Eventually went to SDDM, the simple something display manager. And it turns out that SDDM is maybe a little too simple, or maybe just doesn't have the right architecturing. There is now a very work in progress / experimental Plasma login manager, the PLM, I guess. And the folks at KDE are working on this. And it's going to be Wayland first. It's going to allow some theming things that the other ones didn't. But one of the things that really intrigues me that they're wanting to do with this is have like VNC and RDP, so remote desktop from startup. I don't know how many people have tried to crack this nut before, have worked on this problem, but having remote desktop on a remote machine and being able to maintain remote desktop even after, say, a reboot of that desktop or power off and power back on is really challenging. So being able to have a desktop manager, display manager that has like VNC or RDP support in it from boot is really intriguing. It's also going to have things like automatically log into Wi-Fi, which is important if you're doing something like user management, LDAP, or one of those. You're going to be able to pair with trusted Bluetooth devices, so that's kind of important if you have a Bluetooth keyboard. Screen readers, power management, display and keyboard brightness, even Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese input. Apparently, SDDM does not handle that very well. Virtual keyboard is something, again, not handled very well. And even the high DPI and HDR support, right? So like all of these things are not done very well in SDDM. They talk about GDM, the GNOME Display Manager, being the gold standard in this. And one might ask the question, well, why doesn't KDE just use GDM? And I think for the longest time you could. I think it may be that you still can do that. But the problem is that it doesn't have all of the integrations with the rest of KDE that you would want. So ideally, you want to be able to set your screen layout in KDE and then have your display manager use the same screen layout. And so that's the sort of thing that hopefully we're going to see with the KDM. I don't know. That's not what they're calling it. It's not KDM. KDM was the old one. But anyway, the new KDE-based utility here. So it's not ready for prime time. It apparently actually has enough code together that it works. But this is something to look forward to in a couple of more releases. I don't know, maybe around KDE 6.4 or 5. Maybe it'll be usable in Fedora 43, somewhere around there. Really reading the tea leaves on those.
I wonder how much it has to do with getting rid of a lot of X, then maybe simplify some of the.
That's actually a really interesting question because KDE I think we talked about this last week or the week before. KDE is intentionally splitting their X and Wayland support like into two different projects. And they are going to continue supporting X, but it's basically frozen at a standstill because nothing new is happening there.
Right.
And so I don't know if the new manager, the Plasma login manager, I don't know if it's going to have X11 support or not. I could see that going both ways.
And isn't it going to end up being tied to the KWin, their Wayland compositor?
It will reuse some of those things, I'm sure. That's an interesting question. I think
because one of the things they mention is that if they when they were trying to do it as agnostic as far as the compositor, they couldn't.
Yeah, so it's probably going to it will certainly reuse a bunch of KWin code, but I don't know if it's going to be like directly based on KWin or not.
I guess where I was kind of going was, would it make it easier to just say, okay, we're only going to take care of Wayland, and whatever's working on X is working on X, and we're just going to leave it at a standstill, and that way you just have one less set of problems you have to work through.
I mean, that's a reasonable way to look at it. I'm not sure if that's the plan or not. I'm not sure if they know yet if that's the plan or not. They were still early days on this. But it's it definitely makes sense to do it that way. Yeah. So very interesting. Something we will see in the future as it makes progress.
I don't know. I'm just happy how far we've come, because I remember some of the old ones too on Unix, like CDE, Common Desktop Environment. I think that was the Sun thing, and boy, that was pretty clunky compared to what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of people that are wanting to try to come up with a common desktop.
You know, that's been a thing that people have wanted for the longest time, and every time you try to do it, there are problems with it. And one of the big ones is that KDE and GNOME are just different. They do things differently. You could say that Wayland itself is the common desktop. Like Wayland is the set of protocols that is common to the desktop. So I don't know, maybe you could make a login manager specification and put it into Wayland. I don't know if that would help anybody though. You know, you kind of get to that joke about, well, the problem is there's too many. There's 7 specifications. We should just make a new one so everybody can get on the same page. The problem is that there's 8 specifications. We should just make a new one.
Don't go with making a new one. Just do a proof of concept.
Yeah, and sometimes that works too.
Yeah, except the problem is when we're going to standardize in this. Well, I don't like it. I gotta fork it. I'm going to make a different one.
I've got an example of somebody trying to do that
with Linux distros, right?
With a Linux distro and using your favorite distros as a starting point.
Oh,
this is coming from the It's FOSS community. They posted about a new community-led initiative called EUOS. It is led by Robert, and I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name. I want to put the emphasis on the I. Ryman. He's a physicist and computer scientist by education, currently working in Brussels on data protection policy. Now, the EUOS is, as I'd mentioned earlier, a proof of concept for the deployment of a Fedora-based Linux operating system with would you believe it, a KDE Plasma desktop environment in a typical, is there anything such as a typical public sector organization? But it is specifically created to address the unique requirements of the European Union's public sector organizations. This is not the first time a Linux-powered operating system has been proposed for the EU. Similar goals have been inspired in earlier projects like France's Ubuntu for law enforcement use and Munich's Linux for government administration. Now, despite the name, EUOS is technically not a new operating system. Since it is going to be based on Fedora, it's just going to be I would say a spin at the moment that would give you the added value of EUOS is standardized, gives you standardization. It would standardize on a common Linux OS as a base for all EUOS users with options to layer on top modifications. You could think maybe a national layer, to regional layer, sector-specific layers, maybe even organizational specific layers, similar to the way that Fedora and Ubuntu currently have spins like Kubuntu, Ubuntu Studio, the two examples we've had tonight. You'd also, as we were talking earlier, we were talking about the Plasma lock-in, a common desktop environment to make it easier for someone to move from one hardware system to another without having to relearn desktop behavior. Jonathan, have you moved from KDE to GNOME and then back again? Do you find your muscle memory getting in the way?
Not for a very long time. It has been a long time since I've actually done anything with GNOME.
Another area that it would help to standardize would be a common method to manage users and their data, software, and devices. Now, what do you think drives the EUOS?
A government grant.
In a way, yeah. It's the concept of public money, public code. I think we've talked about that in the past, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Supposedly, this, though, isn't an official EU-driven project. But to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Why wouldn't they start with, like, SUSE or even Ubuntu? Ubuntu is from the Isle of Man. It's
Robert's
not
got a website. It's a link to in the show. There's a link to it in the article I've got in the show notes that some of y'all can go, and it's even got where people have put in suggestions about that and discussed it. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because CashOS, Manjaro. There's a lot of German, French distributions. And why reinvent it? I mean, if you could just say, you know what, we're going to take SUSE or Ubuntu or Manjaro or whatever. You pick one and okay, this is going to be our standard, and help develop that rather than kind of recreate a bunch of stuff. To me, it just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, or else I'm not fully understanding what the goal is.
Think of a minimal Fedora installation that would meet all the EU compliance requirements. And then,
but if you have a European distribution that already is there, like say SUSE, it's already in the EU. It would need to meet EU compliance. Why not just tweak that a little bit? And then you could even then say, look, we have our own distribution we're using, not based on another country's distribution. I mean, I understand they'd like to standardize it and have kind of a common base, but it seems like you could be further ahead by just, you create the SUSE, Manjaro, Ubuntu EU edition.
Be honest, my personal opinion on why Robert went with Fedora, he already knows it.
There's one other thing. I'm doing a little bit of digging into the same question, and they're actually using, it sounds like Fedora Kyanite, and it's because
immutability.
It's about the only immutable distro that has a stable release.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That also checks all their other boxes.
And I think by going with a stable release that checks all the other boxes, it'll make it easier for them to convince the European Commission to host them at code.europa.eu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure what I think about this project. There are some interesting ideas, like take a standardized base and install or then have like layers that you put on it. So one layer for one country, one layer for another country, and then you kind of descend down the organizational tree. You have different. Here's my Americanism coming out. You have different states inside of that country, and you have different layers for them for their needs. Like that's an interesting idea, I suppose.
And those layers then would be the responsibility for managing them would fall at whoever does that, creates that layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Lee, the European Union itself would have very minimal coding to worry about. Probably be able to just go with a commercial entity or a subcontractor in Europe to provide the maintenance on it.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a lot of Linux that comes out of Europe.
That's very true.
A lot of projects, a lot of, Europe's heavily involved in it.
And I bet Fedora's getting a lot of that European assistance already.
I'm sure. Lots of the developers are from Europe, from all over the place.
But just want to let everybody know about this. Maybe we should keep an eye on it. But check out the link. Be careful you don't go down the rabbit hole I went down and reading about but with the EUOS website and then the code.europa.eu website.
Mm-hmm.
Though you may find some interesting projects there that you may want to take advantage of.
You just may. Jeff, what about DRM? Do we want to take advantage of DRM? Or is there something disgusting about it where we wouldn't want to touch it? That was such a terrible and perfect tee up at the same time. Jeff just doesn't know what to do with it.
Which definition of DRM are we talking about?
Director Rendering Manager.
for HDR, which is Jonathan loves.
Yep.
So what we're kind of fumbling about with is what would an Untitled Linux show be without a good Linus Torvalds rant? Now, the rants may be a little more politically correct these days than they used to be, but they're still fun nonetheless. And the rant comes about because of some testing code for an HDR test that Linus is not very happy with. The code is for the Intel Xe kernel driver, and it's to make sure DRM header files are self-contained and pass kernel doc tests. These are basic maintenance checks to ensure header files are in good shape. This isn't anything really advanced or super complex. It's basically housekeeping code. So I'm just going to read Linus's quote or what he responded to directly. So, I did the poll, resolved the trivial conflicts, but I noticed that this ended up containing the disgusting HDR test crap that A, slows down the build because it's done for regular all mod config build rather than some simple thing that you guys can run as needed, and B, also leaves random HDR test turds around the include directories. People already complain separately about this, and it should have never made it to me in this broken form. Why in the heck is this testing being done as a regular part of the build? And damn it, we don't add random turd files for dependencies and then make the source tree nasty. The stupid that made me notice it was that it was still the thing that made me notice that it was still there was that git status complains about the stupid turds not being removed. But more importantly, those turds also break file name completion. So no, adding it to git ignore doesn't actually fix the problem. It would just have made me not have noticed it as quickly. This thing needs to die. And that's got some asterisks around that. If you want to do that HDR test thing, do it as part of your own checks. Don't make everybody else see that disgusting thing and have those turds in their trees. I'll disable it by marking it broken for now. You guys can figure out what you want to do. But no, forcing others to see those things is not the answer. I would suggest you not make this part of the kconfig setup and normal build at all, but be somewhere else you can run it as part of your tests, i.e., do it as a make DRM HDR test kind of thing, not as part of regular builds. Linus. So I thought that was a fun rant to go over. I don't have a lot to say about it other than I agree that you shouldn't leave garbage everywhere for a specific build and force everyone, even if they don't have the hardware, to deal with it. So any thoughts from my co-hosts?
The kernel needs more automated testing, but this sounds like it was not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, and it literally was. They were forcing every time you build the kernel that it would run this test, whether you needed it or not.
And running the test was creating extra files. It didn't get cleaned out. Yeah.
Yep. And it's one of those where really the only people that need to do that are the original maintainers of those files. Is everything good? Yep. Okay. Then we don't have to do it again. We know it's good. It can be in the tree and it doesn't have to be built again every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Make your tweak over here and have the HDR test run one more time.
Yeah. All the fun of maintaining a whole bunch of code together. It's always challenging and entertaining and all that good stuff.
And it was probably like, oh, we got to get it in the window, quick, throw it up there and go.
Yep.
And
yep,
it should have probably waited till next revision, but they needed it then. And
that's how it goes.
They needed it or wanted it?
Yes.
I don't know.
One or the other.
But,
both.
Or it could have been, we're going to fix that. And then it kind of got on the sticky note lost its stickiness and fell off the monitor and they forgot to go back and clean it up. Or I don't know.
Oh, yes. So true. So true. The to do, this is broken. Don't leave this in production. Get blame. Last edited 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's now at the bottom of the to-do list.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's on the floor behind the desk.
Yeah.
So that sticky note landed. All right. So one last bit of news. This is particularly for us Raspberry Pi fans, and this one surprised me when I read it. It's from Evan Upton, and the official Raspberry Pi POE Plus injector is now on sale at just $25, which for what this is, that's actually a pretty good price. I must say. It is not a PoE switch. It is literally just a PoE Plus injector. So if you want to run a PoE Plus device over Ethernet, this thing will do it, and it will do it off of a regular switch. It lets you inject that power. And it's specifically for the Raspberry Pi. There's a really interesting little quirk here in the timing. The Raspberry Pi 5 doesn't have a PoE Plus hat yet. It is missing in action, as they say. We do have one for the Pi 4, which works rather well. You can push a whole bunch of power through it. And of course, the old school PoE, regular PoE hats work for the older Pis as well. But we don't yet have anything official for the Pi 5. And one of the things that he mentions here that I found real fascinating is that the snappily named Raspberry Pi PoE Plus Hat Plus for Raspberry Pi 5. That's the name of this upcoming device, the hat itself. It's missing in action. He says this promises to be our smallest, most efficient PD accessory, and is in the final stages of development, having absorbed a lot of one of their engineers, Dominique's attention and brain power over the last couple of years. It's been going for a long time. Watch this space. So coming soon, we've got the new Pi 5 PoE Plus hat. There are some things that I would love to see on the PoE Plus hat for the Pi 5. One of the big ones is maintained access to the 40-pin GPIO headers. I don't know if that's actually ever going to happen, but I would love to see it. Anyway, coming soon, we now have the official PoE injector. And, one of the advantages of that is, cheap. How would it go in this case? So cheap or good, pick any one is kind of how the PoE injectors work. And so, you can get one on Amazon for next to nothing, but beware, it may burn your house down. Or you can pay $100 for one that's like, got all of the markings and you're pretty sure it's not going to catch on fire. I'm reasonably certain that the unit here from Raspberry Pi is not going to burn your house down, and it's only $25. So they kind of hit the sweet spot on that. So yeah, there you go.
Nice.
So you're going to wait for the hat or put the $25 out now?
I'm probably not going to buy one of these because I tend to buy network switches that PoE Plus support. Because I do cameras and I do pies and I do, access points, all kinds of stuff. I love PoE. I think PoE is just the coolest thing. I hate having multiple cords on little IoT devices. It's like just plug it in Ethernet and let it power itself that way. It's so much better.
John's got that 64 switch connection switch probably going. And
I've got a pair of 24 port PoE Plus switches.
Oh, 48 ports.
Total 48. Yep.
And I've got 15-year-old Cat5 cable that I ran throughout my house. I'd probably have to replace it.
Cat5 still works.
Well,
You can totally do
Might
it.
not have to. You would be surprised at the speeds good quality Cat5 can do, especially if you're not running it, 300 meters or something like that. When it's short distances, you can really crank up the speed.
You can definitely do 2.5 gig over Cat5. I think you can get away with 5 gig over Cat5 pretty well. I think technically you can't do 10 gig over Cat5 at all, but I'd plug it in and see what happened.
And the power?
Yeah. You can do PoE over.
Then maybe it's worth me investing in that injector and then the hat when it comes out.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for when they figure out how to do PoE over Wi-Fi.
Well, Tesla had something like that going years ago, but that's probably outside of the scope of the show a little bit.
Somebody paged Tesla.
Not the
All
car.
right. Not the car company. That's not the one we're talking about right now. Talking about the original. Okay, let's get into some command line tips. And Ken is going to lead us off. And he's got an interesting here. Continues with his Pipewire series of tips. What's the next one in that series, Ken?
It's going to be PW-MIDI-DUMP.
MIDI dump.
PW MIDI dump. It has only 3 options, and let me go ahead and switch over to my command line here. And I've also got my Qt Pipewire graph up because I'm going to be showing how you're going to need it to help it. But it has the obligatory -H or -- help, which of course gives you all the options that you can use. There's only 3. The other one is the -- version, which of course tells you that I am behind with 1.2.4. So I'm definitely looking forward to Ubuntu 25.04 coming out, so I can at least move up to Ubuntu 1.2.7. But PW MIDI dump can be used to, and let me get back because I don't want to have to type all that over again. For those of y'all listening, the command line says PW MIDI dump space /media /stad /home data /public /audio _ files /MIDI /12 days of Christmas.mid. It's a MIDI file.
Mm-hmm.
So with MIDI files, it will just dump it to the screen. You'll see all the events that are recorded in that MIDI file.
So that's probably a little more useful when you've got a hardware device and you want to connect the hardware device and see what it does over MIDI.
And I'll show you how you do that.
Oh.
To do a hardware device, you just run PW MIDI dump all by itself. And for those of y'all listening, my QTP graph just popped up let's go over here.
It's there somewhere.
Right here, MIDI dump,
Mm-hmm.
which is a Pipewire MIDI stream input. And I am going to connect it to that device.
Mm-hmm.
And
then go twiddle a knob and see what happens.
then turn on my Yamaha keyboard. which I probably should have had on before I ran it because it didn't connect.
Hey, I don't think you're connected to the right device.
So, disconnect. And by the way, I've found that if you hold the control key down when you press on one and then the other, and then hit Control C, that will connect it. And now you're seeing everything running. And I'm just going to hit a few random keys here.
Nice. I can name that tune in 2 notes.
And then you can just exit out of it after you've tested that by hitting Control C.
Nice.
Simple.
Oh yeah, no, that's super useful for, what I probably will use that for is control surfaces. I've got several control surfaces that got knobs and faders to be able to do stuff, and that would be extremely useful to be able to see what each fader is mapped to ahead of time.
And I did a live demonstration without blowing out my audio.
Yeah, it did. It didn't die.
Show isn't over yet.
Yeah, well. All right, Jeff, what do you have for us?
DDGR, which is a command line utility designed for searching DuckDuckGo directly from the terminal. While the tool Googler has become incredibly popular among command line users, there was a clear demand in online forums for a similar utility tailored to the privacy-conscious DuckDuckGo search engine. That's where DDGR comes in. Now, it's important to mention that DDGR isn't affiliated with DuckDuckGo in any way. So this is another group decided to do this independent of DuckDuckGo. One of DDGR's highlights is its ability to let you specify the number of search results displayed per page. And this is far more practical than scrolling through dozens of results at once, as you would with a web interface. Plus, its default layout is designed to save space while maintaining excellent readability. Another standout feature is DDGR works seamlessly with the Tor network. So a major advantage for those prioritizing privacy. Mm. For examples of how you can use DDGR, be sure to check out the article linked in the show notes. It dives into features like shell completion, customized searches for Wikipedia or any specific website, file type filtering, quoted text searches, custom color schemes, HTTPS proxy tunneling, and much more. Now, just keep in mind that DDGR requires Python 3.8 or newer. To install it, you simply just use your usual package manager. For example, I was able to install it effortlessly using the command sudo space apt space install space DDGR. Now, I won't cover all its features because there's so many, but I recommend giving DDGR a try, or even looking at the link in the show notes. It's compact, it's fast, it's user-friendly tool, and I used it some and played with it, and it's pretty cool. And since it's a command line utility, it comes with a handy man page for a guide. So you'll have everything you need to know. So happy command line browsing.
Nice. So the ultimate next step of that, by the way, is one tool that you can just say, I want you to connect to Google, or I want you to connect to DuckDuckGo, or whatever other search engine that you prefer.
True.
That is the let's see, what will we call it? YAGR, yet another Google replacement. Something like that. All right. I have a very, very quick command line tip for you, and it's just cd space dot. And let's talk about what that does. First off, it changes directory to the current directory. And those of you in the kind of middle amount of Linux command line knowledge are going to scratch your head and think, why would I want to change directory into the current directory? And I will tell you, if that directory was deleted and recreated out from underneath you, that is why you will want to do it. I've come across this when test running Firefox nightly on my Fedora machine behind me. When you first start Firefox from the command line from within the folder, it will go out and check for updates because it's nightly. It basically has an update every day. The way that it installs that update apparently is it completely erases and then re-downloads that folder. And so when you run something like /Firefox, it installs that, and then you either close it, or because it's nightly, let's be honest, what's more likely to happen is you're going to crash the browser. And then you go to run /Firefox again, and nothing's there. You run ls, nothing's there. It's like you're nowhere on your file system because the folder got deleted out from under you. So cd space dot brings you right back there. It refreshes the list of files and folders, and then the world is once again right, and you can fire Firefox back up to crash it yet again on whatever thing you were trying to test. So there you go. Now you know how to handle that.
Nice. And you've rescued somebody another day.
Yes. Myself in this case. You can also use cd space dot / which was how I was doing it. And then I realized, actually found on the internet, somebody else in the same problem. They're like, yeah, cd dot. It's like, think about it. Yeah, that probably would work, wouldn't it? That's the same thing. All right.
Now, one quick question. What does cd space dot do?
That goes a directory up. Oh, that's the way it works. All right. I'm going to let each of the guys plug whatever they want to, get in the last word on something that they want to. We'll start with Jeff. See if he has some poetry for us.
I do. And we'll see if I have maybe the next one of the week or two, I might have a story about trying the Ubuntu beta. I might just load it on and just go crazy and say, I'm just going to run the beta. We'll see how it goes. But nothing else to go. So a haiku this week. Oh, blue screen of death. Fatal error has occurred. I move palm to face. Have a great week, everybody.
I move palm to face. That's great. All right, Ken.
Well, before you try that Ubuntu beta, may I recommend that you back up? You could either use CloneZilla, my favorite, or RescueZilla, but definitely back up before you do try any of these betas we talked about tonight.
Yeah. You might want to back up before you try CloneZilla, too.
Yeah.
And I say that only half jokingly. If you have anything really, really important on your hard drive, throw it on a flash drive first, because it is quite possible to trash a machine with CloneZilla. Ask me how I know that.
And what's your favorite tar command for backing up with?
It's going to be something like tar /CAVF, the name of the file, and then the files that you want inside of it. I think that works. I think that's right.
Yeah, I just use rsync.
Yeah, that works too.
Go through our command line tip spreadsheet and find where we've demonstrated tar and determine which one of the ones we've shown would work best for you.
We've probably talked about tar several times over the years. If I had to guess.
Oh yeah, you could write a book on tar, and then somebody probably has.
Oh, I'm sure. I bet there is a O'Reilly animal book just about tar. All right, it is time, guys. We're going to wrap it up. If you want to find more of me, there is, of course, Hackaday. You can find my weekly security column goes there basically every Friday morning. That's also the new home of Floss Weekly. We have a lot of fun there. You should go check out our latest episode talking about Fedora 42, the beta, and the KDE stuff going on there. I talked with Neil Gampa. It's been a couple of years since we had him on, so we brought him back. We've got fun stuff going on there as well. We appreciate everybody that watches us, and those of us that are part of Club TWiT. We definitely appreciate it. And if you're not, why not? You need to think about it. It's about the price of a cup of coffee per month. Definitely worth it, and a way to support the network and the shows that you love. You should check out Club TWiT. Appreciate everybody being here, both live and on the download, and we will see you next week on the Untitled Linux Show.